Hello. Namaste and greetings. Welcome to the show. This is your show, Manage Better. I'm your host, Anshuman Tiwari. This is episode number 78. Right? Don't laugh. I know that most of you who know me this know that this show started more as a hobby or as an experiment or more like what to do during the pandemic and those kind of things. But it is now on episode number 78, which um, which I am very happy about, and it is all possible because of your love, affection, and support. I have gotten better in that time as well, so that also is a side effect, you can say. First of all, I can see I am live on LinkedIn and YouTube, but it is always useful if some of you who are live on LinkedIn and YouTube can let me know whether this is working for you or not. That always helps. So, yeah, some comments are coming in, which means it's happening. Okay, so this show, a little bit about the show, those for those who are new. I of course started the show from a career point of view, in the sense that how can I help people in mid career, how can I help bring skills that are useful to them, that could help them extend or further their careers, or at least do what they're doing in a better way. My belief always was that nobody has the skills, all the skills that are needed. Everybody can improve from wherever they are. And today, there is so much to learn, so much to understand from across the world. So, and this show started, like I said, as more like a hobby. But I've been lucky. I've been able to host two members of the Thinkers 50. Thinkers 50 is the world's most prominent, most exclusive club of 50 thinkers across the world, across management topics and all. And I was able to host Oleg Konovalov and Subir Chaudhary, who are both part of this Thinkers 50. I was able to bring a world famous comedian, Papa CJ. I also was able to bring some LinkedIn influencers, including Abhijit Bhaduri, Santesh Rao, Niharika Sodi, and many others. Sudarshan Ganpati, I remember. And some very young entrepreneurs last week, Ishan Sharma and Kushal Lodha, leadership experts, Bharat Waklu, Anand Pillai. These are all big ticket names, which, because of the fact that I was able to convince them to come to the show, I have had a lot of love from my audience. So thank you very much once again. The series also included about 20 episodes with Kimpro Foundation, featuring top quality professionals across the country. And that was great fun, right? So that was also great fun. Now, coming to today's topic, actually, over the last few years, I have, especially from the time that I've had slightly senior roles, I've been very intrigued by this topic around diversity. Frankly, for me, it was never a topic because I grew up in a setup where this was not a question. Everybody was equal, and we were fine with that. And some of my best managers have been women, so the topic did not occur to me at all. It was not a topic at all. And my teams had women in more or less equal numbers, sometimes higher. Some colleagues were all, and we. So summary is that it was not a topic. But as I started to see and or look around and see the world in slightly more evolved, I would say, ways, I started to realize that maybe I was the lucky one. I was in teams where diversity was not a problem. And in fact, I've been in teams where seven ladies and I was the only one as a in that leadership teams. But even then, it didn't occur to me that there could be this could be an issue. But once I started to realize that there is an issue, I started understanding the topic. And funnily enough, amusing thing, the realization came because HR in one organization I was working for was after my blood to hire a diversity candidate, and they refused to use the word women candidate. And I said, look, if you want a diversity candidate, be specific. And around that time, I started to realize that diversity is beyond gender. Around that time, I started to realize that it is not enough to be diverse in your thoughts and teams. You also have to take a step further and be equal or treat people as equals. And that is where I started realizing that within my own team, men were being paid far more than women in the same team for the same kind of work. That was the time when I started realizing that I also have a responsibility as now a senior person to bridge this gap. Right. So I just wanted to share this journey from being somebody who thought diversity was not a topic and it was just a, you know, quote unquote topic or trending topic for people to talk about, to realizing that it was a serious issue, to realizing that it was a serious issue in my own team as well. And then I started, of course, my journey of, moving from diversity of gender to thought to more inclusive teams and so on. But like every topic, when I realize that I don't know enough about the topic, I try and learn more about the topic. So I turn to two friends who are also experts in this topic. And I've invited both of them to the session today. The reason I wanted to speak to them and also exchange notes is that we need to understand this topic a little better. Uh, and all of us need to understand. It is high time that we stop pretending that we know this topic. We don't know this topic. And I'm not even saying that the guests today or also know this topic in totally inside out. There are there are a lot of new areas emerging in this space. So to explore all of that, today is a little serious show. I have invited two guests who are experts in their own rights and also happen to be my friends. So firstly, I'll bring in Dr. Prachi. Dr. Prachi, newly minted PhD. So firstly, congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I the I will quickly read out some introduction for you, Dr. Prachi, and I will keep calling you Dr. Prachi. So don't stop me because it
Thank you.
doesn't happen too
Please do.
often. um, uh, Dr. Thakur is a two times TEDx speaker and diversity strategist who co-wrote the regional report for Asia Pacific region on the gender in tourism for UNWTO in 2022. So that was a high point, I am sure. And of course, PhD is always a high point for anybody. I have two PhDs in the family. Uh, I am the illiterate one in the family, so I keep getting reminded of that. But coming back to Dr. Prachi, she frequently engages with global audience via across medium. Now, of course, it is possible. So much is possible online. So that also including lectures at international universities, multiple podcasts, one being today. She's a very sought after speaker. We are glad that she could give us time and multiple international conferences. Very recently, also, I think in Thailand, one conference. So, very well sought after speaker, expert in this space, particularly in the hospitality area. Uh, and hospitality is actually one area where one would believe that diversity is very high. But that begs the question whether if diversity is high, is equity high enough? So that is something that we will explore with her. And she's trained women across multiple organizations to build their way. And of course, now using online, offline models and everything. So, welcome, Dr. Prachi. Any opening comments?
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that you are calling me Dr. Prachi Thakur. It took a long journey to get this title. Thank you so much. And very pleasure to be here. Very, very much happy to be here. And I'm looking forward to today's discussion.
Fantastic. Our other guest, Vanaja Pillai, also expert in this space, is having a slight, I would say, technical challenge. So she's unable to join as of now. She was in the show and had to just quickly leave. So hopefully, in the next few minutes, she will be back. Otherwise, we will continue with the show. Oh, she's back. Let me try. Um, and if it doesn't work, then we will give her a little bit more time to return. Okay. So clearly some issue. So let's give her some time. Maybe some issue. So the I firstly wanted to start with a simple question, Prachi. Like I narrated my own example that from believing that it was not an issue, from believing that it was an issue, from understanding that it was a much bigger issue than I thought, and so on. And one always tends to believe that, this is not our problem, this is the world's problem, and so on. And when you do realize, and thankfully I had my eyes open when I realized that in my own team there was uh, a pay gap. I was pretty good with the numbers in terms of having a slightly equal or close to equal workspace. But I was also lucky because I was working in setups like banking back offices or IT, where traditionally women employees were numbers were higher, right? So I won't say it was my doing. My doing was only probably during some hiring or other decisions. But the pay gap hit me really hard. And that is when I started taking this topic a little seriously. But since you work in this space a lot, what is that you have seen in terms of what is DEI for you, or in the whole space? Are these just words or trending words? How do you see these words?
I think
Let's go.
uh, I'll tell you, when you were narrating your story that it was just a topic and how you started in this space. I was in my mind thinking how anomaly of a case you are, because a lot of people tell me that they were lucky to work in teams where there were more women, and that is the reality. If anyone in even in our audience today gets to work in a team where they have more women, especially in leadership, it's absolute rare, because the reality is that women leaders are a rarity. If I talk about, I will continuously keep giving tourism and hospitality references because that is my core industry. We have so much of women in our industry. So if you look at plain statistics, that okay, how many men and how many women are there in the industry, you'll be like, oh, equality, you don't really need this discussion in the industry, because according to data, we have more women than men, and we are the only industry that has this number. So that makes us quite unique, that we have 54% of women on an average globally. But when you go to countries like Japan, when you go to countries like Nepal, you have more women, like as in 60 to 70% women in tourism and hospitality industry. But the other reality is that if you look at the roles they are in, then you'll be not at all surprised to find that there are less than 3% of women leaders in our industry. It is changing now. I will definitely say that the future looks very, very hopeful. But that also brings us back to our question, right? That are these just words? Definitely not. And what does DEI mean to me? I think now is the time that, since we are moving to a very positive direction, when we are having more leaders and we are envisioning more leaders, I think DEI for me means a creation of space that lets people flourish. Yesterday I posted a video on LinkedIn talking about what does empowerment mean, and how most of us are empowered because we take our own decisions. But am I allowed to enact my empowerment in the space I'm working? So even if I'm a leader, let's say you make me a leader, let's say you are my hiring manager, you hire me, but then when I say that, okay, these are the policy challenges I'm having, why don't we discuss and change it? And then you are like, no, you are one off case, we can't change the policies. So that does not allow me to flourish, right? So I think DEI for me means creation of spaces that allows people to flourish.
Really well put. I think creation of space is very important. And as you were speaking, I early in my career I was a consultant to, and I'll name the group. There is no shame in this. The Taj Group of hotels, right? So they are one of the top brands across the world, and I was a quality consultant, and some of my assignments were with the kitchen staff. And that was the first time I realized that none of the chefs were women. And I had grown up thinking that being a chef is a woman's job. Uh, I come from a family where boiling water by a man is considered making dinner.
Oh,
So, so I do pretty well now. I
congratulations.
I've improved. I can make a meal for a visiting guest, but this was 20 years or more earlier ago, and I realized that a profession that I consider to be completely, uh, you
Feminine.
know, feminine or women oriented had not a single chef, not even senior, junior, extra junior, intern, nobody was there. And this was
Yes.
the best hotel chain in India,
It's
and
a
not like
reality for
50
most
hotels.
hotels even today.
Yeah. So and then after about a year, we one of the meetings, lady chef joined, and she was actually the second, the sous chef, as you will know. So and that's when I again, that was another milestone in my journey where I started realizing, oh, it is not what you think. You come from a background, and you have these perceptions. Luckily, I was always around people who were able to challenge my thinking, or at least provoke and encourage me to think differently, and I remained open minded about this. But I like the concept you shared, the spaces. That is an important one, and I totally agree that diversity, equity, inclusion doesn't happen overnight, doesn't happen just because we wish. We have to do something about it.
Oh, we do.
And with that, clarion call for action, we have Vanaja hopefully back. Let me try once again. Vanaja,
Hi.
yeah, so this time it works. Fantastic.
Yes, I'm so sorry. There always has to be something dramatic in these kind of
No
sessions.
problem.
I added
I'll
that
send you.
drama. Apologies for that.
I'll send you 50,000. You are a dollars person, so let us find $50,000.
I'm
So
glad your opinion of me is slightly more elevated than my own.
okay. Now that Vanaja is in the show as well, let's quickly. I'll share a quick introduction for Vanaja. The I have some comments coming in, so I'm just trying to catch if. Don't worry, guys. Yeah, our second speaker is here, so the show has a comments reel as well, and I'm trying to catch some comments there. Okay, Vanaja Pillai, welcome to the show. Vanaja is a writer, advertising professional, and a DEI advocate. Um, Knowing her, I can say she's not so much an advocate; she's more, super advocate, I would say. But after spending 23 years in marketing and advertising, Vanaja took a step back in 2020 to see what she can do to catalyze the slow but sure progress happening around gender parity. So she's somebody who has taken concrete action with her own career, not just talk about it, but actually take some action and see what can be done. As an extension of her passion for people and their growth, she works towards a world where women are well represented at every level in the field. And this is, mind you, coming from when she's coming from advertising and marketing, which we all believe and think that is already well represented by women. And maybe that's not the case, right? At least not at the leadership level. So, which are the myths that we will also try and break as we get deeper into the show? She is currently the president of 22 Feet Tribal and heads DI for DDB Mudra Group. In 2021, she published a fantastic book, which I have read, Omana, her first book, which is a collection of lovely stories around, guess what, contemporary women and their lives. So, and of course, Vanajan and I are MBA colleagues. Now, none of you, including Dr. Prachi, is allowed to comment on how old I look, how young she looks. That is not allowed. So, I am making that clear. Welcome to the show, Vanaja. I
Thank
guess
you.
some glitches, but finally you are here. Any
Yes, and
opening comments?
yeah, I think I wanted to compliment you on the consistency and, and the perseverance to manage a show like this. And I'm glad that DI has found its way into it. I saw it's the 78th episode. That takes a lot of work and that takes a lot of commitment. So, congratulations on that. And I just wanted to start by talking about why I think, in retrospect, DI is important for me. You've known me, Anshuman, for a long time, and I was always clear that I wanted to be in the advertising business. And there are some stereotypical kind of understanding of what makes for success in the advertising business. So you've got to be flamboyant, and you've got to be charming, and you've got to be a certain kind of aggressive person. Was when I started off in advertising, and I was told categorically that I'm not really a good fit. And it's taken me a lot of time and effort to be able to get to where I am. And I think perhaps some of that in the journey also has contributed to my interest and commitment to DEI, because I think this feeling that any particular kind of profession needs only this kind of a personality is also flawed. And I would like to believe now that I'm testament to that. I've done okay in my career. And so perhaps that's where the journey started, when you're told you can't do something because you're not a particular kind of person, which I think is completely untrue. And that's where really, and I think it's so important now in the context of leadership and managing, to be able to embrace different kinds of people, provide equity in the workplace, and create inclusive environments as managers and leaders. And I'm glad you're talking about this in your show today.
Thanks a lot, Vanaja. Now, since you have the mic, let me bring a question to you. Uh, we explored a little bit while you were trying to join the show. We explored a little bit about what DEI could mean. So we've covered that ground a little bit, but I had a slightly different question for you. Most of us, and that includes me and many of my friends, colleagues, and all, most of us believe that the world is working just fine. We don't need another movement. So what do you have to say about this? And the movement I refer to is the DEI movement, or in a limited sense, on even the diversity movement. Even if we
Sure.
ignore the EI part, which is actually a building, you build over the diversity blocks.
Hmm.
uh, why do we need a movement? We are doing just fine. There are enough world hunger problems to be solved, not
So
this one.
two parts to that question, and therefore two parts to that answer, right? The first one, the world is all fine. It isn't, unfortunately, Anshuman. We just have to look around and we'll know how it isn't. The global gender gap index, the World Economic Forum published in June this year, will tell you that India is 127th in terms of parity among some 150 countries in the world. Is that something to be proud of? Not necessarily. So who is this world fine for is the question. There are a select bunch of people who've had the privilege, including myself, to be honest, who've had a certain kind of journey, certain kind of resources, and therefore, for me, if I live in my little bubble, it is perfectly fine, and I'm doing okay. But the world is not fine for most of the world. And therefore we need to do something about it. So that's one part of it. And the DI piece is actually, while we've coined it diversity, equity, inclusion now, and there's more conversation about it in the last few years, it's not a new movement. It is not a movement at all. If you go back to the time where there was slavery, to the time that women didn't have voting rights, to untouchability in India, to there's always in society and world certain communities which are underrepresented or do not have a voice. And for time immemorial, there have been people who've been trying to perhaps give those kind of communities a voice. And that this is what DEI is about, right? The conversation today, specifically in the workplace, and the discrimination or the disparity in the workplace. But DEI is not anything new. We've always, there, as long as there are power dynamics, as long as there is disproportionate allocation of resources, you will always have disparity, and you'll always have the need for us to focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, because the world is supposed to be a fair place. It isn't. So I don't know whether that makes sense to you, but it is not a new movement. There are at different times in history, there are different communities who need to be brought at par, because their starting point is different. Your starting point is different from a woman's starting point. My starting point is different from the starting point of a woman who's perhaps from a even more underrepresented and marginalized community, and we need to be able to recognize that, and that's what DEI at the heart of it is about.
Absolutely. I'm sure you realize that I was asking a provocative question. I do understand this, and across the and once you read a little bit of history, and particularly modern history, and of key movements, we do realize that much of what we talk about, including our favorite topic these days, AI, is not new. So the same holds true for topics like this. Maybe the names and words and phrases that we use are new, which also sadly means that not much progress has been made. So, if 50 years ago or 100 years ago we were talking about representation for women in voting rights and similar topics, uh, maybe we have voting rights, but we don't have enough women in the parliament, for example, and we are suffering as a nation and society because of that. One of the reasons. So there are other reasons as well. But and in areas where women representation was possible, the brutal, naked truth is that the men in the house, particularly in the panchayati and local election levels, are actually representing or are the de facto uh,
Decision makers, so to say.
decision makers, right?
Hmm.
Which which is no progress at all, actually. So we symbolically maybe put some garland or put somebody on a pedestal, but actually taken the foundation away in many ways. But that's one of the reasons why I wanted to explore this, because while we can't change the world, many of us and the audience today in this are mostly career minded people. We can make some changes in the workplace.
Absolutely.
The country will solve for itself, and there will be other people more capable who will try and do that. But can we do something in the workplace? So, Dr. Prachi, I will come to you. The question I have in mind is that for some people, and I can see some comments, this almost feels like a fantasy topic. This is no topic at all, right? Even now, and I narrated my own story that at various points in my own career, for multiple reasons. Sometimes because it was just my exposure, and I had so many women colleagues around me that this is not a topic, and it took some harsh realities for me to realize that this was a topic for a larger population. But in your experience, what is your I would say experience in, or any stories or any harsh stories, anything that you want to share, one or two stories where you see that this became a real issue? And I'll ask the same question to Vanaja after Prachi has shared.
Oh, that's a burning question for me because my whole career pivot happened because of the same thing. So for people who don't know me, I was a numbers person. I was an accounting and finance graduate, bachelor's and master's. And my favorite person to go on YouTube was Ashwat Damodaran because he used to value companies. And I was like through and through finance person. But then I started traveling, and on one of those travels, I was called a sex worker, even when I was wearing traditionally very Indian clothing, and I did not have anything provocative. And why I'm saying provocative in air quotes is because it's about, you know how people say that beauty lies in the eyes of beholder, the dirt also lies in the eyes of the beholder. So it is more or less like that, and that hit me as a person and as a woman. And as Asian women, we are taught to think that no matter what happens wrong in your environment, you are the reason. So I, in that moment, started self-criticism on what I did wrong, probably tattoos I got or the piercings that I have, where the bad decisions that I took that made me a target of that comment. I never once thought initially that it might be their problem. But then, as a naturally curious person, I went to talk to other women in travel tourism industry, and I was in Varanasi. Coincidentally, that happens to be a hub of solo female travelers as well. So I started talking to women who were from India, who had come to India from other countries, and asked about their experience with hotels and these spaces that we are walking into. And not to my surprise, everyone had a horrible story to share. Some of them were incredible, but some of them were so horrific. I still have the audio, and I am yet to take the researcher role to transcribe that audio, do my research paper. But it is just so horrific that I end up crying all the time. And it's yet to become a research published paper, which was my intention at the beginning. So when you see that it happened systematically, so all these women who were discriminated by the hotel staff or tour guides or tour operators. So you know that there is a problem on the other side. And that is what this personal experience of mine brought me into DEI space. I mean, I'll tell you, I was also an anomaly in the sense that I never saw patriarchy in my house, in the sense that my grandfather was such a loving person. He passed away earlier this year. But if my grandmother would say something, my grandfather would do it. It wasn't that typical male thing happening. My father was also like that. My mother would wake up late someday and he will be very happily making tea. He's also like that. So I thought that, okay, this is how family looks like. But then when you see other families in my neighborhood, or when my father was pushing me to study, I made this story on LinkedIn as well on how I had a slightly complicated relationship with my father. I thought, okay, everyone's father is like that. But when I came out for studies, all of my friends started getting married. Damn, 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 damn. And I'm like, oh, that's not the reality for everyone. So that also became evidence of the thing that the environment we are in might just be our environment, and that's not the reality for everyone else. So I think that became a very important point for me to note when I came in DEI space, that yes, my experience counts, but it should not dominate the way I look at the world. Like the way, Vanaja was talking about, that all of us have privileges, but that does not mean that we will paste our privilege on everyone else. Oh my God, I come from Bihar, I'm from an underprivileged family, so my struggles are everyone else's struggle. No, someone has got it worse, someone has got it better. So I think coming in and staying in DI space, I think these are some of the stories that have dominated and directed my direction, if I can make a pun here, in DEI space.
I have nothing to say. And perhaps that is an appropriate response. The society at large and men particularly are to blame. And I can't even take that blame because I don't even understand how somebody can say something like this. But
See, I want to cut you here. I don't think I would blame the men. And this is where I think the whole discussion goes haywire. It's not about blaming a person or blaming a gender. It is a system that is the problem. My grandmother was a part of that system. So I told you how my grandfather was a very loving person, right? My grandmother wasn't. And I have also been very open to talking about her because she was the glaring red flag of patriarchy. She did not let my mother complete her career. She wanted me to get married in 2009 when I was 13 years old because she was on deathbed. And if it was not for the men in my family, I would probably be married by now. So it's not men who are the problem. I always want to make it a point that it's not a gender that is a problem. It's a system that's a problem. So whenever we talk about DEI, and I think I talked about it, I think a few days ago, that women leadership programs, when we have it right now, most of the time what happens that we have all women participating and we completely leave men out of it. And that's why we are making a big mistake, because the systems we are part of doesn't consist of only women or men for that matter. So the patriarchy we are talking about, the challenges that come because of patriarchy, that the guy at the hotel who had the courage to tell me that I'm a sex worker didn't happen because of a man. I have gotten similar comments from women as well. Oh my God, why aren't you married yet? Why don't you have a kid yet? When I was your age, I had 2 kids. I mean, that's good for you. But it comes from women as well. So it's not about men. It's about a system. And anyone can be a part of that system. So I think that is a very important point I thought I should flag there. That we are not men haters as people say we are.
this is not totally how I intended this conversation, Prachi, but thank you for being real. And over to you, Vanaja. Anything any
So
story, or
whereas, so
may
as
not
a
be a horror story?
as a person who's about to turn 48 and have lived in India all my life, where do I start with sharing experiences as a woman in India, right? But I think Prachi said it so eloquently in terms of individual experiences that women have, and I think it's important in the context of this conversation to know that some version of that kind of conversation happens in the workplace also. It may not be exactly what she's gone through in her personal capacity, but even in the workplace there are these derogatory comments or sexist comments which sometimes people don't even realize they're making, right? Why do you need a promotion? Your husband is doing so well. Why don't you focus on your child? You've just had a child. Why do you don't take so much stress and try to take so much workload? You have a child at home, take care. Those kind of things happen in the workspace even today from well-meaning people sometimes, but who are actually not very well-meaning because they don't understand the overall context of what is happening. I've had, for example, so many young men, actually younger to me, who've come to me and said, because they know I work in this space and I've been running a women's leadership program that I'm really proud of. Why do you think women need these advantages or privileges? You didn't have those. and you made it all right in your life. So why do you feel like there is a need for giving these special advantages or treatment to women at this point in time? Or when the Phyllis program, initially, of course, it was seen as just another something, but a year later, when it started showing results and outcomes, the question I was often asked by, when are you starting the male version of this program? Right? You don't want to be out of it no matter what, right? That's how privilege speaks. So where do I start with the kind of experiences that one has, in just recognizing these signals and signs of people who are genuinely well-meaning, in the workspace, but require a lot of perhaps initiation, education. And that's my one line leave behind, so to say, for this conversation, right? I think if each of one of us commits to recognizing our biases and working on them, that's the most important part of what each of us in the workplace need to do at this point in time. Because once we start commit to that, automatically, I think you'll learn where your blind spots are, what are assumptions and beliefs you have grown up with, which perhaps are not entirely true, and start working on these things, right? You spoke a little bit earlier about political representation, Anshuman. 7% is the representation of women in ministership in India, for example, right? So we have to look at those larger numbers and recognize that it's just because in my immediate circle I see 5 women working and they seem happy and they seem hardworking and doing well in their careers, the world is all good. It isn't. I think it starts by educating ourselves on that front.
I think, Anshuman, I'll take just a second about how she pointed out that the comments which are supposedly well-meaning but are disastrous. Yesterday, I posted an excerpt of my TEDx talk that has just released day before yesterday. And a CEO of a company comments that your career is progressing faster than my beard. Kudos to you. I so wish I could take it positively, and I really did. I wanted to, but then I told him that I also have obviously it was a snarky comment, and I'm learning how not to get too snarky on LinkedIn. I told them that I also have a session on compliments which are not so good compliments. I think I should recommend that to you, because one of my colleagues, actually, Jess from Australia, she has a whole PhD. Her whole PhD is on this benevolent sexism at workplace, on how some things which seem like good comments are actually horrific sexist comments. So yeah, we have a lot to go on how not to compare women's career with their own beards.
Anshuman has nothing to say to that.
It is not often. It is not often at all. And Vanaja knows me for many years. It is very rare that I am left with nothing to say. And in this case, there is a little bit of shame as well on behalf of the larger society as well. And while you said, Prachi, and that men are not to be blamed and it is not gender, but I do think there is significant. I've been part of this whole journey and I've seen this up close. I've been in situations where comments were passed in my team. I had to red flag people. I actually have worked in a setup where the head of operations literally had a red flag system. She would raise her hand, this is a red flag. I followed that up, and in my own team meetings, whenever I felt that a comment was not in the right spirit, I had to publicly red flag people, men and women included, mostly men, but in general. And but this is something I just wanted to share. I don't know what it means, but I wanted to share that there is blame to be taken by men as well. We can't escape by saying. I know you are saying it as a more worldview kind of a point of view, but men will take it as हमको कुछ नहीं करना. It is system. So when the system will improve, this will automatically improve. System will only improve when we do something about it in our own micro ways. I may not, like I said earlier, I may not be able to influence policy. I may not be able to influence how parliament is running and other things, at least not yet. but if this show goes to 1,000 episodes, who knows? But I in at workplace I can certainly do that, and that is my appeal to all people and all people in the show, men and women included. That certainly at workplace we can make it a. Uh, Women don't need our kindness; they just need the same treatment as everybody else, and the same respect that we would accord to any women member of our family. The same respect is expected, and it's not a favor. It's not a favor. It is just being fair. Vanaja and Prachi, I wanted to add one thing more. I've done 77 of these shows, plus many more audio events. I am today feeling in the show that all of that was to prepare for this show. So the and this might be the least attended show. I know that this might get the least views also. I know, but I am hoping that each member who either listening live or sees this later does feel a little bit that this is a real topic, and that's the only reason I wanted to do this show. That I know that this will not get me any numbers. I know that this will not get me one subscriber on YouTube, not one follower on LinkedIn, and I'm fine with that. So that's something that I just wanted to share.
Let's hope you're
Okay.
surprised, Anshuman, and you get many followers because of this episode as well. You never know.
For the first time, I'll say I won't care, because that's not the point today. This
Yeah.
is a topic I have been wanting to speak about or discuss, and I realized that I didn't have the content to speak about. So, of course, you need a certain stage, a certain critical mass to be able to speak about something. If I had spoken about this as the second episode or third episode, it would have felt hollow. So I'm glad I was able to do what I thought, and both of you agreed to be on the show. But this is not about me, so let's take some questions from the audience, or at least comments. Jaya Babu, a very prominent voice on LinkedIn as well. Jaya Babu is saying it's not men or women who suppress women; it is strong people with less emotional intelligence suppressing weaker people. Agreed. Somebody earlier said it is oppressed people who are keen on oppressing versus people who get oppressed. Fair enough. But like I said a little while ago, there is significant and disproportionate blame to be taken by men. Otherwise, we will just walk away again from this, and leave it to the universe.
Can I just,
So,
if you don't mind, can I
sure.
comment on that a little bit? I think this entire conversation about men and women, I completely agree. It is not one gender that needs to be taught something new. It's a everybody in the workplace has a role to play in it. I think it's very important for women, for example, to play a significant role, which will be good for the entire world in redefining traits of leadership. There is an
Mm.
assumption, the mixing of confidence versus competence has been happening for years and years and years, right? I think those dynamics are changing a little bit at the workplace, and women can play a very significant role in redefining what leaders look like, and by being their authentic selves, the empathy. And I'm not saying all women are empathetic, but I'm saying there is this notion that has been said at some point in time: you've got to dress a particular way, you've got to speak a particular way, your voice should be heard whether or not you have anything important to say, you should be the loudest voice in the room because you're a leader. Though all those misconceptions that have prevailed, it's an opportunity for women to now question that and change those traits of leadership. Like I said, people said I can't make it in advertising. I have, and it's taken time and some amount of work, but that can happen. So women have the role to be themselves and redefine some of these, and not ape men to become exactly like men are, just because you're in the workplace and you need to be authoritative. And men have a role to play in perhaps just opening up their minds a little bit, and being careful about the behavior that was acceptable perhaps at the workplace 20 years ago because it was largely men, and now it's not. And each of us has a role to play. I think we should look at it from that lens versus who's to blame. What is the role each of us individually? If anyone thinks they don't have a role to play, they're wrong. There is a role to play. So
Absolutely.
proactively, make that choice and make a difference in how you conduct yourself at the workplace and interact with your colleagues. I think that is the point we should really take back.
No, I agree, and I think when I said that men are to blame, it is from a male perspective, because I don't want men to walk away from this thinking that the universe will solve this. Universe will not solve this. We will. So coming back to, since you, Vanaja, I think you brought in workplace. I'll ask the same question to both of you, and I'm completely deviating from what we had, what I had planned as questions, because this is a fascinating topic to deep dive in. So, Dr. Prachi, the question I have more is that, we discussed some cases where at workplace or outside of workplace, but in the larger society as well, um, women have had to face comments and just completely unnecessary provocation. What can be done at a workplace? And you come from a hospitality sector, so I would request your maybe comments around that, and then Vanaja can add a little bit from sector that she and I are more familiar with, the services setup. So anything that you think, like specific things that we can do, starting tomorrow, starting next week, starting next month, something like that. What would you do?
I think I'll build on what Vanaja was saying earlier. I have this very anecdotal quote that I use in most of my session is, what worked for your father probably won't work for you. And that is the system we need to walk with. Oh, in hospitality, I have heard from N number of executives when I walk in and tell them that, you know what, this is the area where we can work in. Oh, this has been working for 20 years now. Doesn't mean it will work in next 20. Does not mean that at all. So I think the first thing that we can do as people, as systems, and as industry is to realize and be aware, just what Vanaja said, be open-minded that there are some things which needs to be changed. Let's begin with that, because so many of us are still struggling on keeping the legacy. No, the legacy was a bad kind of legacy. Slavery was also a legacy. Do we need to keep that? Probably not. So in workplaces, we need to have this absolute awareness that there are things to be changed, because change happens when you are open to it. No matter how much self-help books you read, no matter how much babas you follow and Jay Shetty podcast you gulp down, if you're not open to change, you will never change. And that happens in workplace policies and workplace intentions and actions as well. Unless you're open to fact that, okay, I should be aware that, okay, yeah, there is something needs to be changed. So that is first thing. And second thing is I'm a diversity trainer. So I will advocate for more diversity training in workplace, because diversity training leads to that awareness. Because as we were discussing earlier, sometimes it happens that we think we are so inclusive. I used to think that. We think that, oh my God, I've got the best education, the best degrees. I come from a really diverse background. Doesn't mean I'm inclusive. I still will have some areas where I need to work. The moment that awareness happens that you can never be perfect in this area, it's always a work in progress, I think half the battle is won. Because then you'll be open to taking feedback from people about the mistakes you make. It's not that, I work in DEI space, but I'm very mindful and very present when someone calls me out on something that I say wrong. Because yes, I am a DEI person. Yes, I work in this. Yes, I know some things about it. But that does not mean I can't make mistakes. And that's the third thing. Realize that you can make mistakes. No one is perfect. And that, the biggest problem organizations today are making, especially in hospitality tourism industry, is that they wait for investment to best program, best partnership, best training sessions, best XYZ. The good becomes better and then it becomes best. You can't start from best. It doesn't happen. It's a superlative degree for a reason. So grammar comes in play at times. So I think, these are three things that I recommend that everyone can do. Even people as individuals can realize that if they want to be inclusive, they don't need to attend the best diversity programs to become inclusive today, because it doesn't happen. You need to become good today, take one action today, maybe take 2 actions tomorrow, and then you become best over time. So these are my 3 things that people can do at workplace to make it more inclusive and breathable.
I think
I'm glad you said that, Prachi, because I am a quality professional. I truly believe that everything can be improved step by step, and you start somewhere and then you build on it. And we don't land on Mars on day one. So, or in this case, don't land on Moon on day one. You build build on it. So, Vanaja, anything from you on how to
yeah,
do this at the workplace?
actually, I'll build off what Prachi said, right? One, to me, even if I'm unpopular, I will say the one thing that we cannot escape is the need to hire women into leadership disproportionately. And I keep hearing from people how they can't find the right candidates, etc., etc. Search harder, search wider to find the right kind of candidates to be able to fill up your leadership positions, because it is very, very important for women to be represented in leadership for us to make sustainable change organizationally. So, at an organizational level, one, disproportionate hiring of women into leadership is critical. Second, exactly what Prachi said, which is please invest time in educating and training. Unconscious bias training, inclusion training, I think is so important because, and I know lots of people might think it's just intellectual BS. It isn't. Every time you go through these trainings, there's something that stays with you, and perhaps the next time you are about to do something which was not sensitive to someone, you'd probably correct yourself, and that's a journey that happens. So please, organizationally, do these trainings and make these investments, because it is our responsibility as organizations to be able to equip our people to work better with each other. At an individual level, I would, as a follow up to that, when these trainings happen in your organization, please attend. It's again, like I said, you think this is some activist stuff. It isn't. It is about equipping yourself to be able to work in a changing work environment where there are more women. Tomorrow, there are going to be more people with different kinds of gender identities and sexuality. Have you asked yourself why you haven't worked with as many Indian Muslim women as you should probably? And so it is equipping yourself to work in a changing work environment. This is not BS. So please attend individually, make that time to do that. And at a personal level, I would recommend, and this is something I've practiced over the last 3, 4 years, and it's really helped me, make a surprising friend. Someone, when you look around your friend circle and your people you hang out with, chances are they all come from a similar background or education or, demographic kind of thing. Challenge yourself to find someone different to engage with. If possible, make it someone from a background that you're a little worried about, a little concerned about, fearful of. And you'll find that when you start looking at people as individuals, it becomes easier to actually get over your biases, get over your preconceived ideas and notions, because this is not about you being a bad or ill-equipped or uneducated person. This is about the conditioning that has happened for years and centuries, that we all actively, like Prachi said, just because she works in the space, it's not like she doesn't discover a new bias every day that she might be facing or I might be facing. So it's an ongoing kind of work that we need to do, because it's all inherent and we need to work on that. So find a surprising friend, someone that you otherwise would probably not have interacted with. And every opportunity you get to speak to someone who's not necessarily from your typical demographic, have a conversation a little deep, not just khana khaya, but a little bit more about what their families are like, what their motivations are like, what drives them. We make ourselves feel better by just asking our house help and watchman and everybody else khana khaya, because that's the easiest question, right? But to delve a little bit deeper, you will become a better person for having known people from different backgrounds and communities. That's a promise. I've done that over the last 3 years, and I feel like I'm a richer person because of it.
I'm glad you said this, Manja, because this is something we all can do. And over the last few years, particularly when I've had fairly large teams, and in my kind of space, actually, large team is not very common. So having 200, 300, 500 people in this kind of a space. And I started realizing that, unlike my past when I had smaller teams, I knew everyone, not by just by name, by where they stayed, who in their family was, and what their likes and dislikes were, and what switched them on, what switched them off, many of these things. I realized that I was no longer able to do this with a 100, 200, 500 member team. So I started this program where I every quarter, now every 6 months, because of the size. I book time to speak to a member on video call anywhere in the world. I have people across the world in my team, and I I don't know what it does to them. I'm sure they feel that somebody senior is speaking to them. They feel nice about it. They come very well prepared. Some even dress up for the. It's their 15 minutes of fame. But for me, it is huge education, because I know that there are so many people, so many different views. In many cases, I've been able to figure out, oh, so this person acts in his or her emails because of this. And if I were just a little bit more mindful, careful, I could actually, in a selfish way, get proper work out of them as well. And which is every manager's dream, that if you can figure out how people operate, uh, at the end of the day, you are there to get some work done, right? So I've seen this, and this has been my contribution in a way to. And we have some members in our team who are representative of LGBTQ and the queer community, and it's been very enriching and mind-opening kind of conversation. And we just have a family conversation like everything. There is no need to have a conversation on topics that you don't need to have. But speaking about that, and since we are coming to the close of the show, I just want to take one question from Naresh. Naresh, welcome to the show. First time, I think. He's curious to know about building a great cross-functional team, and a team that embarks a D&I with parts, of course, men, women, LGBTQ, high profile, all the entire thing. Just trying to list the diverse segments here. What would be the ideal challenge that would be ideal challenge, and what result it could produce? Okay. Anything, either of you?
Can I say, I'll pass this question to Vanaja, because I think she is more experienced to share. But I want to tell you the first thought I had while reading the comment on my phone right now. This question sounds like, and I'm not talking in a derogatory term, it's just the anecdotal thing that came into mind. This is a question that asks how to make a good khichdi that tastes like a biryani. Why I say that is because I see this mistake being made by people. They want to tick all the possible boxes that we know about diversity, like literally all. You want women of color, you want age diversity, you want neurodiversity, you want disabled ones, you want people from the spectrum, you want people who are from different ethnicities, you want people who speak different languages, you want people who, I mean, there are a lot of segments. And if you try so hard to make one team that consists of literally everyone, you are making the mistake you probably didn't want to make at the first place. Not looking at the gender, not looking at the ethnicity thing. You're probably making the same mistake. And this is where things go really haywire. So that is the ideal challenge. You can't have a khichdi that tastes like a biryani. For biryani, you need contents of a biryani. And that is my view of it. But as I mentioned, I'll pass on this question to Vanaja, because I think she'll handle it way more better.
So, I when I've stepped into the DI field, my first task was to build the women's leadership program that I spoke about. And I was very comfortable with that because I've had that journey. I think I had the experience and the common sense to know what it will take to build that. Then a year later, I was asked to take on the DI mandate for DDB Mudra. I thought for a second, now this is like all of us. I'd been an armchair activist for the longest time, right? I believe there should be fairness, but I hadn't genuinely done anything towards that. So I decided to name the program that we run after almost as a reflection of my state of mind. And the program is called We Don't Know Shit. Okay. And the idea of that program is to commit as an organization to getting closer to underrepresented communities and getting to know them better. I agree with Prachi. I spoke to a lot of partners at that point in time to understand what this DI journey should look like. And the one thing they warned me against is to start hiring just to do a checkbox. Please don't do that. Your organizations need to be ready to be able to set these people up for success. And the first step towards that is this education piece. So the entire We Don't Know Shit series is about talking to experts on a regular calendarized way to understand what those segments are about, what it will take to actually bring them into the workplace and set our infrastructure and everything up for success, right? So do that first. So I don't think there's an ideal, like Prachi said, I don't think there's an ideal mix of everything. In fact, whenever I talk on global forums, the interesting thing about India is that you don't know what diversity in the workplace truly looks like, because there are so many different elements to look at. If someone were to ask me what's the absolute representation of a diverse workplace, you can't, because there are so many parameters to look at, and then you build intersectionality into it, which makes it even more complex. So I think for most organizations, two things I would say: one, start on the path of education, committing to regularly understanding different underrepresented communities and what it will take to embrace them, to bring them inside, and what organizationally we need to change. And then the second part is pick the segments specifically where you think you can genuinely make a difference and bring people in, and set them up for success. Set them up for success means not just hiring and bringing them in, but providing them the forums and the voice to be able to impact the organization in some way. Start there. I don't think there's a ideal mix of the khichdi or the biryani that will work for anyone. Yeah, I think start with the education, because we're not there yet.
Well said, Vanaja. And I think we are now up on time, but I will steal some more time from you. There are some comments that would love to share. I think this is our friend Vanaja. You will know this, Rajan. Uh, being open-minded requires absolutely, Rajan. I totally agree. Rajan has put a few more comments, but for want of time, we can't take all the comments. Thanks, Rajan. Sangmitra has also shared her appreciation a little bit. I was looking for a comment particularly. Yeah, Kakuli. Uh, Prachi, you would know Kakuli. So, Vanaja, before you or you, if you can't get the context, Prachi and I, and of course Kakuli also, we are part of LinkedIn's first cohort of 200 creators that was formed last year. So we
Congratulations, all of you.
know some of us. Yeah. So Kakuli is saying women need not ape men. They can't. We are just too bad. you you can't. So also not just men. Women are keepers of better. Yeah, that's something we discussed. But at the same time, men are great allies too. Yeah. Thank you. Some are. More need to be. So it's not only gender-based separation; it's a mindset. Well said, Kapili. And I think I just didn't also want to end this session before acknowledging that there is much more to DEI than what we discussed today. We, of course, primarily discussed gender. There are more marginalized categories which also need representation. Maybe one day I will be able to do a proper show with that. These topics are serious topics, and this is for everybody in the audience, that they need a little bit more clear description. I can't, in that sense, throw a stone and run away. So I wanted a proper discussion around this, and even some exploration around these topics, see what other people are doing, and open up the topic for everybody. I truly understand that I can't solve it, but I also understand that I can begin wherever I am. And usually that is enough. If many of you in the audience and those who see this program later, and there will be a podcast version, so if you hear this later on your walk or drive to work, make a promise that you can actually do something about it's not that you can leave it to the universe or the system, or to other people, and it need not be always the women who have to champion this. In small ways we can champion this. Next time your HR comes to you with a diversity mandate, think a little bit. It's a fair call. And I've done this. Initially I ran into conversations some years ago, maybe about a decade ago, when I said that, look, I can't hire a woman candidate if you don't send me an interview. For I can't interview 5 men and hire a woman candidate. So it starts with it starts with you giving me at least a 50-50 sample of the uh, the diversity hire. How does it start? So obviously those things remain, those challenges remain, and I'm glad that we could have this conversation. Uh, Fantastic comments coming in. Vanaja, I think Savita probably either knows you or yeah. Thank you, Savita. There are one request, both Prachi and Vanaja. There are some questions both on LinkedIn and the YouTube thing. So whenever you get some time over the weekend or during the next week, try and
Sure.
see if you can. As expected, some comments are there which don't. I don't want you to respond. They are just, they are from the same mindset that we are here to fight. So, but I will leave them on the. I will not delete them because I want others to read and learn what not to say. So let the people who
Yeah.
have made those comments rot in the hell they created. So the I will leave at that. With the usually all my shows I end quickly, and I'll steal some promotion time from you, Vanaja and Prachi. The next week is another fantastic show with the Shiv Kumar. Shiv Kumar is a legend in Indian management history. He's been CEO of Pepsi and later earlier with Nokia, and most recently with the Adit Pillai Group as almost like a head of strategy and deputy CEO. He's written 2 best-selling books. He will be on the show to take career and related questions and how we can look forward in our career, but try and understand it backwards. So those who are interested in career related topics, please join next Saturday, 11 a.m. I will, of course, post the invites and all on the show. With that, my gratitude and thank you for joining the show. It was an education for me as well. And like I said earlier, I wanted to be a little ready to be able to conduct this kind of show. It is, and I don't even want to call it a show. It's a much deeper topic, needs more time, and I certainly hope that all three of us were able to hurt some people. And that is important, right? Unless there is something pinching, some hurt, something pinches, and you say this hurt, there is not going to be enough change. So if it is all goody goody and nice and nice talk and you go home and have a cup of tea, nothing is going to change. So I've been deliberately a little provocative and upfront in this call, and the intention was that it should hurt that we are not doing enough. So with that, I will let you both go, and thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. And thank you, audience, for putting up with me. And this time, slightly different kind of a talk, but much needed and much more is needed. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
making the conversation happen, Anshuman.
Yes, thank you so much. It's much